Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another edition of Fresh Red Kills. So Fresh Red Kills is where I talk about books that I have recently read, usually multiple books, in very short discussions. I don't necessarily call them reviews, they're just my general thoughts. So the two I'm going to be talking about today are Zastrozzi by Percy, Bysshe, Shelley, and The Greatest Story Ever Told So Far, Why Are We Here by Lawrence M. Krauss. And I guess I'll start with this one. I read this as part of Book Trek 2022. That's a reading event that I am spearheading, or captaining, I guess you could say, where we are celebrating Star Trek fiction. But I also have sort of a bonus away mission with that. In addition to reading Star Trek fiction, old and new, I challenge people to pick up a nonfiction science book and read that. Star Trek is very much about technology, and I think technology and human ethics actually proceeding and progressing side by side. And it is a future which is highly scientifically literate. So just in that spirit, I wanted to encourage people to read some science. And I had a bunch of them sitting on my shelves. Now, speaking of shelves, you can see behind me, my shelves are very empty. If you're new to my channel or haven't been keeping up, maybe this is the first video you've seen, you know, I'm kind of in a moving limbo phase right now, moving houses. So most of my books are packed up. But I did leave out a couple of books in anticipation of Book Trek, and this was one of them. So this isn't the first book that I've read by Lawrence Krauss. Back in the 90s, he actually did write The Physics of Star Trek, which was published, I think, right around when Deep Space Nine was still on the air. And he goes through what is the actual physics behind a lot of the stuff that we see in Star Trek, how much of it is plausible, what would we actually need for it. And that's a pretty good book. I think that if you're looking for nonfiction science for Book Trek, that is actually a very good, even though it's outdated at this point, it's still a very good read. I'd also read his Universe from Nothing, which I overall enjoyed, and I think I followed along with it fairly well. That one was based on an hour-long lecture that I thought was really entertaining, that I liked. So I picked this one up actually a while ago. I've had this on my shelf for a few years. And I wasn't quite sure what exactly I was going to be getting out of this. I think that I guess I thought that I was going to be getting kind of like a history, almost like a brief history of the universe, something a little more on the lines of Hawking. That's not really what we get. Instead, what we have here, it's a history of particle physics. Krauss takes us through the various physicists, really from like the late 1700s up through the present, with a little bit of biographical information, and also the the theories or discoveries that they are famous for. And he has a very casual writing style, and overall I think he does an okay job with it. I will say, we're talking about particle physics and everything. I definitely get lost in the weeds with that. By the halfway point of the book, he's trying to explain certain scientific theories, and he does give some helpful, I guess somewhat helpful, illustrations, but it's still dense enough, or just beyond the obtainable for me, where I couldn't quite understand why these discoveries were so impressive. And he's trying to show us that. He's trying to show us, and make us appreciate these discoveries. But it is very difficult. So I'm not entirely sure that he was successful with this, at least for me. I kind of wish that I got a little bit more entertainment, more fun out of this. He does give us some little tidbits, little biographical things. He's met the people personally. He lets us know about them, and that stuff is interesting. Krauss, if people don't know, he has kind of thrown his hat in with the New Atheists. So there is a little bit, there are some backhanded remarks about religion. That doesn't put me off as a reader. I'm, in some ways sympathetic to that. But just as a warning to people, just be aware of that. What I did like about this is that it introduced me to a lot of physicists that I didn't know about. And he does allow to shine, especially some physicists, like some female physicists, who, because of the time period in which they were practicing, did not get the credit or really the opportunities that they deserved. So I don't know if I can entirely recommend this book. I'm not entirely sure that it did what it set out to do. Like I said, it's maybe it's just the topic of particle physics that did it for me. I'm glad that I read it. I would just say that it's okay. I would recommend his other books before this one, though. It might be something I have to kind of go back to sometimes and look through to see how I really feel about it. But if you've read this, I'd like to know your thoughts and what you came away with. You can probably hear it's been raining really hard, so I'm sure you can hear the rain hitting an air conditioner right off the roof onto an air conditioner over there. I think I heard some thunder in the background too, so that's just the elements, which I guess is appropriate because we're going to be talking about some Gothic. I have been reading through Gothic novels, or at least the major ones, in chronological order, and I've been doing that with some other booktubers, and it's been a really fun experience. Not all of the books have been great, some of them have been really good, but I was really looking forward to this one. So what I have here, it's a Dover Thrift edition. It's got 2 novellas from Percy v. Shelley, Zastrozzi and St. Irvyne. I read Zastrozzi, and I didn't go on to read St. Irvyne kind of because I wasn't crazy about Zastrozzi. This was written by Shelley when he was 17 years old, published in 1810. So he's young, right? This is a very young author who has a very good command of language. Where this book kind of lost me was in the plotting. It is highly, highly derivative of Gothic that came before it. There's really nothing, unfortunately, nothing new. I was kind of hoping for something. We have Zastrozzi basically trying to exact revenge on a guy named Percy, and we don't really know why until the end. And the story's only about 100 pages. Along the way, a woman named Matilda. These Gothic writers love the name Matilda. That name pops up all the time. She falls in love with Percy, and Zastrozzi is helping her to basically seduce Percy, because Percy's heart belongs to another woman named Julia. But of course, Zastrozzi has ulterior motives that Matilda doesn't know about. And the story gets off to a quick start. Where immediately we see Percy kidnapped, and he gets thrown into a cave, and he's like almost starved to death, and then he has to escape, and he's on the run from Zastrozzi, and it hits the ground running, and I was excited. I was like, okay, you know, you threw me into some craziness right from the very beginning. I can't wait to see where this goes. But then unfortunately we get the whole other, what ends up being the main plot, Matilda and Percy, where Percy is staying with Matilda, and she's basically just like, you know, trying to get him to fall in love with her, and that goes on for chapter after chapter after chapter, and you feel like you're kind of running through quicksand a little bit through some of those chapters, or at least I did. And then the ending, the last 2 chapters. Oh, I should say there's a missing chapter in here, but probably missing on purpose. Shelley probably intentionally left out a chapter in order for the reader to sort of imagine what happened in between, which that's the first time I've ever experienced that. I guess there was some precedent before this, Tristram Shandy, and there are some other novels that have done that in the past, but this is my first experience with it. Did it help the book? No, it didn't, but I can definitely see where there may be some situations or some novels where it could be very interesting as a device. This all culminates, of course, into some, bloody death. Zastrozzi, he ends up giving this big speech towards the end. And what's interesting is that, Shelley was, this is a profound thing for the time, Shelley was atheist. When he was in Oxford College, he published a pamphlet called The Necessity of Atheism, something that I read earlier this year for maybe Midrash. And I actually liked that pamphlet. I thought the pamphlet was actually pretty good. And we see some of his atheism in here, but it's through the mouthpiece of Zastrozzi. And basically, Zastrozzi is, he doesn't fear damnation. He doesn't believe in God. He has this atheistic bent, and that's one of the reasons why I guess he's so immoral, which I was surprised that that's the take that Shelley would, maybe because it's a little bit of a younger Shelley, that's what he would take, or the angle that he would take, I should say, with the atheism. That the atheist of the book is this arch villain who is completely unredeemable, but who is also unfortunately inconsistent. He talks about other people's souls being damned, or somebody going up to heaven, but, you know, in the next breath, he's talking about how he doesn't believe in any of that stuff. I'm not sure how you're motivated by trying to damn people's souls if you don't believe in hell. So it's that kind of inconsistency that we see in here. And for a short book, I know it's short, but you don't really see much in character development or anything like that either. So it was interesting to read for the most part. There have been other Gothic novels that we've read that weren't necessarily great, but I found very interesting because of the time period. This one may be the least interesting overall. So would I recommend it? I wouldn't. Even though it's short, it feels long. And it kind of made me not really want to go on to St. Irvine, just because I felt like Zastrozzi was kind of a disappointment. Next we'll be going on to Frankenstein, the 1818 edition. So, you know, that's another reason I wanted to make sure I read Percy Shelley, so I can read then his lover and then wife's masterpiece, Frankenstein. So those are the two books that I had read in August, actually. Again, this one for Book Trek, The Greatest Story Ever Told So Far, and Zastrozzi by Percy Bysshe Shelley. So unfortunately, I don't think I recommend either of these, but, you know, I'm always glad that I read them. I just don't recommend you do it. Anyway, if you've read them, I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, thank you, BookTube.